Day to Remember, Part 2. It was early November in 1997. I was outside my house unlocking my car door when an old lady approached me and sold me her husband's old Audi 80 estate. After having the car repaired and serviced, I decided to take it for a nice long drive to the seaside. Great Yarmouth is only 67 miles or 108 kilometres away, and it would be a perfect chance to test the car. It was a cold winter's morning, and I drove slowly for the first few miles, avoiding the morning ice on the roads, and then drove a little faster for the rest of the journey. I arrived there just before lunch and parked the car at the side of a small restaurant. I had been to the restaurant before and knew it had great food, so I decided to stop for lunch. To be totally honest, it was actually my plan to go there for lunch anyway. I ordered steak and chips with garden peas, tinned peas because it was winter. The food arrived, and as always, it was like kissing an angel. I ordered a coffee after the meal and sipped it slowly as I looked out of the window. I must have been daydreaming because I had been looking out of the window for a few minutes before noticing the snow. Yes, snow. I paid for the meal quickly and then rushed outside. I stood there in total amazement at what I saw. It must have started snowing as I entered the restaurant. Not only was it snowing, but the snow was already a few inches thick on the ground. The sky had turned white and there was a blizzard coming. I walked carefully around the corner to the car and unlocked it. I got inside and started the engine. It started first time and sat there purring like a kitten. I turned on the heater and defrosted the windows before the wipers could clear the snow from the windscreen. I looked outside and the snow was falling even heavier than before. I thought about staying in a hotel, but I was worried that I could be trapped there for days, so I decided to get home. I started to drive and I could feel the wheels slipping on the snow and ice. I felt nervous that I would damage this wonderful old car, but fear filled my heart. I drove for a few miles and passed many cars that had stopped or broken down in the storm. Some had crashed, and that made me feel even worse. As I drove further and further, I started to wish that I had stayed there the night. Cars were everywhere, stuck, stranded, or crashed at the sides of the road. One road looked like a scrapyard due to the number of wrecks each side as I drove between them. When driving on snow or ice, it's important to keep moving and not to try and stop too quickly, or the car will become uncontrollable. I was concentrating as I drove along, and I could feel the sweat start to roll down my back. Then, just as I was turning a corner, I saw a car that had tried to brake and lost control. It was halfway up a tree, and there was no sign of the driver. Suddenly, the driver appeared in the road. She appeared there, waving her arms and shouting out to me to stop. I couldn't stop that quickly. I waved my arm for her to move out of the way, and I came within centimetres from hitting the silly woman. The car did eventually come to a stop, and she came over, slipping and sliding, until she arrived at the car. We talked together, and she told me how she had lost control of the car while driving too fast. I looked at her briefly and gave her a disapproving tut as I listened to her story. She commented on how new my car looked, and then I gave her a lift to the nearest petrol station and wished her luck. I was now halfway home. The snow was falling fast that looked like fog. My car was cutting a path through the snow like a plough, and I was waiting for the car to stop forever. I turned on the old vintage radio that came with the car and listened to the news. "Please stay in your home. The roads are extremely dangerous," the voice spoke out. I sighed as I drove along in the awful weather. Anyway, I got home without any problems, and a few days later the snow was all gone again, and I took the car to show a friend of mine that collected old cars. I arrived at his home and he was in the garage polishing one of his BMWs. I got out of the car and he started showing me some of his collection. He had 4 BMWs, a Porsche 911 and 3 Audi cars. I showed him the car and he loved it. It was an estate car, very rare. He looked at everything on the car and asked, "How much did you pay?" I smiled and replied, "5." Tim raised his eyebrows and said, "5, huh? Well, I'm not going to pay more than 7,000. My eyes opened wide and I said, No, I paid £500 for it." Tim shook his head and laughed while handing me a cheque for £7,000. "You are too honest," he said while walking inside the house. He would not take back his cheque, and so I had to sell the car to him. As far as I know, he still has it, and it still looks like new. But with the road laws in England now, I don't think he still uses it on the road. The end. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.